Of what I intended to do last time was to speak about the explanation of Rav Kook on Shmuel. And it's based on the pasuk which we say every single Shabbat, Moshe va'Aaron b'choanav u'Shmuel b'korei shmo. Now Chazal have an interesting insight into Shmuel. Sorry, 1 minute. Yeah, into Shmuel. Because concerning Shmuel, it's written the following in line number 5 in front of you. V'alach midei shana b'shana. And Shmuel
our screens are
here. Okay. Line number 5. V'alach midei shana b'shana. V'savav Beit El v'agilgal v'hamitzpah. V'shafat et Yisrael et kol ha'makomot halalu. And Shmuel used to go around all of Eretz Yisrael, Beit El, Gilgal, Mitzpah. Chazal in Masechet Shabbat, שהיה שמואל הצדיק, מחזר בכל מקומות ישראל, ודן אותם בעריהם, שנאמר, והלך מדי שנה בשנה, וסבב בית אל והגילגל והמצפה, והם, all the other judges, they used to sit in their houses, yashvu ba'areihem, they sat in their cities, in order kedei laharbot sachar lechazaneihem ulesofreihem, in order to give money to the people who worked in the Bezdin, etc., etc. So what was the greatness of Shmuel? The greatness of Shmuel was in his ability to go round and round and speak to everybody. Says Rav Kook, line number 15. Moshe va'Aaron b'choanav u'Shmuel b'korei shmo. Sheshakul Shmuel k'Moshe va'Aaron. Now, Moshe and Aaron are together, and Shmuel is separate. Says Rav Kook the following: Ha'aracha shel ha'adam b'ma'alato ha'elyona. How to evaluate a person? When you want to evaluate how great a person is, you have to evaluate him in 2 different dimensions. Be'ikar mahuto, who he was. That means in his personality, what he was, and his essence. Wise guy, great guy, etc., etc. And the other dimension is the gam biyachas shelo b'tikun ha'olam. What did he do to improve the world? So therefore, says Rav Kook, when you want to look at a great person, you evaluate him in 2 different dimensions. Who was he, and what did he do? Says Rav Kook, k'chok hashalem lashpia uletaken zulato, in order to influence and change other people. Uve'inyan tikun harabim. And when you look at how to help people, line number 20, v'atzlakatam, כבר כתב רבנו יונה בשערי תשובה, שער שלישי, מה מגמת המקדש שם שמיים. The objective of somebody who's going to do קידוש שם שמיים, שהיא להראות לכל את עיקר תפארת התורה, והדרה נועם דרכיה ושלום נתיבותיה. The importance, the dearness, the greatness of the Torah, and how it has its impact in improving the ways of people. Omnam, many times, המון העם לא יכיר ערך התורה והמשפט האלוקי מצד עצם עניין השלמת הנפש ופארה. Many times people won't see the impact of the Torah, of learning Torah on the soul of a person. What does learning Torah and keeping mitzvot help you? Many people won't realize that. But what do they see? They see how this person behaves with other people. אלא מצד הכשרת נתיבות העולם. כי האיש, וכן העם ההולך בדרכי התורה ומחזיק במעוזו, Shalom v'hasheket yeh bigvulo. He'll be a quiet person. He'll be adin nefesh. Ki ayeret Hashem be'emet, somebody who really, really fears God. Lo yichas, won't get angry. Lo yitga'el chavero, will never look down on other people. Lo yishaker, he won't lie. V'lo yoneh, and he won't shmuchel. V'yeh zahir b'chvod habriot. Ukshe'adam, says the Gemara in Masechet Yomah, Ukshe'adam medaber benachat im habriot, when a person speaks nicely to other people, umikcho umatano b'shuk, and the way he works in the market, selling things, na'eh habriot omrot alav, ashrei shelamad Torah. Happy is the person who learned Torah, Yisrael asher b'chayet ba'er. So therefore, says Rav Kook, there are two dimensions in the Torah. One, what it does to the person himself, and the impact which it has on other people. So therefore, and that's, if we look at the Rambam, the end of Perek Hey in Ilchot Yisodei Torah, you'll see how the Rambam uses this concept of Kiddushei Shomayim, that the whole idea of Kiddushei Shomayim is its impact on other people. But in essence, the Torah does it to the soul of the person. But often we don't have the ability to see the impact on the soul. We only have the external impact and not the internal impact. Now, V'hinei, says Rav Kook, Moshe Rabbeinu, shebechol et haya tzarich liot muchan ledibur hashchina. Moshe Rabbeinu the whole time had to be ready to speak to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. K'shaya asuk lehorot la'am Hashem, that he had to teach Torah to the people, haderech hayashar ha'ita ikar pu'uloto gvuah ma'madrega monit. Moshe Rabbeinu was above the rest of the norm. He wasn't the usual person. אבל לעם ישראל גוי קדוש ייתון ההכשר, כי נטע די בלב כל אחד אהבת השם מצידו הטוב. ובנוצץ רוח הטהרה בלב איש ישראל ברצונו לעבוד את השם מאהבה. יש זו השעה שגולה בכל ימי חייו. אלא שאצל הצדיקים יישאר כן בתמידות, אצל השעה יש שימהרו להחשיך כוכבי נשפם, ואז צריכים מהם להתעוררות והתחזקות לקיום התורה מצד יופי. Says Rav Kook, you have two different types of people. You have a person who the impact of the Torah is so great that he, every single minute of the day, all he does is thinks about HaKadosh Baruch Hu. All he does, he thinks and learns Torah. And there are plenty of Rabbonim like that. They sit and learn Torah the whole day, and the whole day is connected to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The majority of the people are not like that. They will go to daven, they will go to hear a shir, but the impact of HaKadosh Baruch Hu and their essence doesn't exist. And that is why, says Rav Kook, Lezeh, for this reason, Sarich liyot ragil bein ha'amon. A Talmid Chacham has to be also busy with other people. Ladat seitam uvoam, how they go into their house and they go out of their house. V'likvoim ahem liitim lo rachokot siach kodesh, and to speak to them about how they behave. To teach them how great they are, and sometimes to rebuke them. If you want to take it into the historical period, you have what's it called? You have a great Rov and you have a Rebbe. The tafkid of a Rebbe was to influence other people. A great Rov often used to sit in his own Daled Amot, but his impact had on other people. Take the two great, if we want to see the impact of this idea, let's take the problem of the Hasidut. Why did it develop? There were many great Rabbanim, but they didn't have the ability to speak. And people knew they were great. People knew they were great, but there wasn't any connection. The Baal Shem Tov Zecher Tzadik Livrocha saw the necessity to create a new dimension, to create Rabbanim who will go out to people and visit them and speak to them, etc., etc., etc. And that, says Rav Kook, was Moshe, let's go back to it, Moshe and Aaron. Sorry, Moshe and Aaron. Ulezeh, line 44. Aaron, Shaya Ohev Shalom, Verodef Shalom, היה מצוי מאוד בין הבריות, ואמר היה מראה להם חביון עוז תורתנו הקדושה, לפי ערכם התמידי, according to the majority of their people's value. Moshe was in his 4 amot, speaking to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, teaching Torah. Aaron was the one who spread Torah. Nimtza, שפעולת משה רבינו, עליו השלום, בלב ישראל הייתה להקנות להם שלמות נועם דברי התורה מצד עצמות אמיתת תכליתם. Moshe Rabbeinu taught Torah in the highest level. I'm jumping a line. אך קניין השעות הקלות האלו הנעלות בערכם ושקולות נגד כל ימי חייהם לא ייתכן. אלא אם השרת הדרך התמידית באין הפסק, שזה היה פעולת אהרון הכהן. Aaron managed to lower the Torah and to speak to the people at the correct time. Therefore, we have the tragedy of Moshe and the Hatzlacha of Aaron. When it comes to Moshe Rabbeinu, when it comes to the death of Aaron, it's written, Vayivku Kol Bnei Yisrael. Everybody cried for him. Everybody. Aaron was the Rebbe. He was the Kohen HaGadol. Ohev Shalom, Rodef Shalom. He had the ability to speak to everybody. Moshe Rabbeinu, with inverted commas, was high in the Olympus. He taught Torah. His whole life was just him and HaKadosh Baruch Hu and Klal Yisrael. And he was the one who spoke up for Am Yisrael at the hard times. But when it came to the nitty-gritty of the people, it was Aaron. Those were the 2 people who led the Jewish people. And that's why Moshe and Aaron as the leaders. But let's go back. What does Rav Kook say about Shmuel? About Shmuel, it's written, Ushmuel, line number 50. Shaya Navi Hashem Ubchiro. He was the prophet of God and the one who Hashem chose. Hechzik bishnei apanim. He took on himself both jobs. Umishpat kol Yisrael aya elav levado. Vaya tzarich gam ken lechazek lev ha'am ha'amoni. And he was the one who had to strengthen the hearts of people. Lorot lahem ziva Torah. To teach them the glory of the Torah, v'na'amah, and its beauty. Shim yasheret gam darkei olam hazeh. V'gam lafiach, and blow into them. Ruach ha'chayim ha'amitiyim. B'kerev ba'alei de'ah. V'chol ha'amon Yisrael le'et metzor. לכן, אף על פי שלא קם בישראל כמשה, even though nobody was greater prophet than Moshe, אבל ביחסו לכללות ישראל, but as far as the impact on כלל ישראל, היה שמואל עושה גם פעולות משה וגם פעולות אהרון, and therefore Shmuel b'korei Shmo. He's equal to Moshe and Aaron. His impact was so amazing that he was equal to both of these people. That, Rabotai, is the change of tide in the history of the Jewish people. The period of the Shoftim, in inverted commas, was like the Dark Ages. Yoshua and Elazar, etc., etc. Then comes the Shoftim, what we learned. And then we have a new breath. New air has come. Somebody who, there's no Kohen Gadol, there's no shofet, there's one person. And he is the one who is going to change the mood and the impact of spiritual level of the Jewish people, and that is Shmuel Hanavi. That, Rabotai, is the introduction to Shmuel. If there are any questions, if there anybody who wants to say anything, please do, because this is the most important dimension which we are going to study about Shmuel. So please, if anybody's got anything to say, please let me know. We can speak now, and then I'll carry on.
That is, if I may say something.
Yes, Phil, and then comes Jack.
That is so powerful. Why is it not downplayed or upplayed in halachic talk?
It's not my responsibility. I'm teaching you. Okay, now you can bring out that message. Look at Rav Kook himself. Rav Kook himself, for instance, in the 1912, 1913, he went. There's a special book story called the Masah HaMoshavot, the journey of the Rabbonim who went to all the Moshavim in the whole of Israel. Rav Kook, the Rav of Yerushalayim, Reb Chaim Sonnenfeld, and the Maggid of Yerushalayim, Reb Ben Sion Yedler. And there's a whole book on it, to all the places where they went. Yerushalayim, Petach Tikva, Zichron Yaakov, Tveria, the whole of Israel. They went on horse and cart to visit all the little villages. Okay, I've got the book here. Okay, it's called Ele Masa'eh. Books ever brought out of all the places where they meant to and who they met and the impact which they had even on the non-from people, because they went everywhere. Okay, there are great Rabbonim who still do that, but I'm saying, don't ask me, Phil, not my business.
It's our business. It seemed to me, I asked if any big rabbinic trips to the secular kibbutzim. The Rav
of Ponevezh, Rav Yosef Kahaneman, Arod, Givat Chaim, the Mashgiach of Ber Yaakov, after Nechemya Yom Kippurim, used to go around to all the non-from kibbutzim. Rav Shlomo Wolbe, his name was. He was a very famous Mashgiach of Ber Yaakov, and then he came to Yerushalayim. He's written a whole book of all the lectures he gave in all these different kibbutzim. Okay? Nowadays, unfortunately, okay, doesn't work.
They say the Chazon Ish also went, stories of the Chazon Ish.
But he went to the Frum kibbutzim.
And Moshavim.
Yeah, but he went more to the Frum kibbutzim, okay, to help them. But I'm saying there were great Rabbonim who did that, but that is the way Rav Kook portrays Shmuel. Yeah. Jack, what did you want to say?
Well, I was going to say, what you've said to us is very powerful. How do other commentators view the opinion of Rav Kook?
They think he's a communist.
Sites which Rav Kook has. Okay, that's why Rav Kook is so powerful. But unfortunately, what happens is that often his language is not good. It makes it very hard. Even this is hard to translate because his works are poetry. His Hebrew is poetry. And the language which he uses is often language which is sometimes Kabbalistic. Okay, and you've got to get used to his way of thinking to understand. Okay, listen, that's Rav Kook. Brazil. Okay, Rav Soloveitchik also used to speak about these things often. But I'm saying you take great leaders who cared about. You take the Lubavitcher Rebbe who cared about Klal Yisrael. Nachon, nobody used to come. He didn't used to go out of 770, but his emissaries caused everybody to bring them there. So I'm saying different dimensions. That was the minhag of Chabad, etc. But that's the essence of Rav Kook's ideology of Shmuel. And now let's carry on, and we're going to see the impact of Shmuel and how this works. It's a very, very, to me, that's when I first learned it many, many years ago, it had a huge impact on the whole concept of what the objectives of Torah is, etc., etc. Right. Now let's carry on and how Shmuel, now we're going to speak about how Shmuel changes the environment of the Jewish people. Now let's try to go over for a minute the period of Shoftim. The period of Shoftim is a period where Avodah Zarah, idol worship, has a massive, massive influence on the Jews.
You're frozen.
Very much so.
He's gone. He has such an impression that he's left.
נראה לי שיש בעיה עם שידור. כן, עכשיו זה בסדר.
יופי. לפני הזה, I want to, what's it called? This shiur, which I'm saying now, is dedicated to my grandparents who were killed in the Shoah and all their family, all my mother's family, and to my wife's family who also were killed in the Shoah. I want to dedicate it. They should be Le'ilui Nishmatam, and to all the people here who I'm sure have relatives who also passed away or killed and slaughtered in the Shoah. And this shiur is dedicated to their memory, that our limud Torah should be a linui neshama to all of them. And to all the people and all the families and all the korbanot of the Shoah.
Amen.
Okay. So let's carry on now. Okay. So it's written the following. Vayomer Shmuel el Bet Yisrael. And Shmuel says to Beit Yisrael lemor, Im b'chol levavchem atem shavim el Hashem. If you really want to do tshuva, now that the Aron HaKodesh has come back, hasiru et Elohei haneichar mitochechem. Take away, remove all the idol worships, the idols which you've got, v'ashtarot, v'achinu levavchem el Hashem, and prepare your hearts to Hashem. V'ivduhu levado, v'yatzel etchem miyad plishtim, and worship him alone. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu will save you from the plishtim. Vayasiru b'nei Yisrael et ha'ba'alim ve'et ha'ashtarot, vayavdu et Hashem levado. Now, let's just see what's the essence of this sentence. Take note of the word here, levado. Levado. It appears twice. Right? We have a pasuk which we all know. Ein od milvado. There is nobody besides him. Shmuel now teaches the Jewish people. There is nothing besides God in this world. Nothing. And this is what you have to learn. And one of the miracles which takes place from now onwards is that idol worship, we don't hear of idol worship for about 80 years. The next time we hear of idols is when Yerovam sets up the 2 golden calves, one in Beit El and one in Dan. But the whole period of Shmuel, Shaul, Shlomo, there is no idol worship. Now what happens? Says the Netziv in his commentary, Ha'amek Davar, Aval ha'inyan, shebe'emet yetzer hara, Yud Tzadi Hei Resh. Yetzer hara shel avodah zara haya az meshuneh. It was strange. It wasn't a ideological concept of idol worship, was to help them to get an agricultural society. And agriculture runs on the forces of nature. The people believe that these forces of nature are guided by idols. And therefore, Ata mishum shayach lefi da'atam leparnasa, hamoshech lev ha'adam mo'od. Because parnasa is something which is the driving force in the world. And therefore, since it's the driving force in the world, they will ask themselves, what is the real driving force in the world? Those which control the forces of what is the idol worship of this generation? The Netziv says, Geld, money. Money, wealth is the driving force behind everything. And says the Netziv,
רב טיילר, אתה שומע אותי?
never promise himself.
רב טיילר, סליחה, אתה שומע אותי?
כן.
כן, תראה, השידור...
Picture, there's a problem with the sound. Okay. Sorry about that, everybody. Okay, can everybody hear me now? נתן, זה בסדר עכשיו?
בינתיים כן.
Yofi. Okay. So therefore, we're talking about the problem of man's inability to worship HaKadosh Baruch Hu properly. And that's what the Netziv says in line number 69. וקשה, 68. וקשה היה להבטיח את עצמו, לעמוד בניסיון שלא לעבוד עבודה זרה. It was very, very hard for people to stand in this nisayon. Okay, it was tested every single day. שלא לעבוד עבודה זרה. Because they believed that all our economy is based on avodah zarah. It's based on worshiping gods. And the gods are the ones who control nature. And therefore they control the rain, they control the sun, they control heat, they control cold, they control wind, everything. And that's what people believed in, because their inability to believe in an abstract God. And therefore, what does Yoshua say? Al ken osif Yoshua lemor, line number 69. Im be'emet atem makablim shelo la'avod avodah zarah. If you really want to accept upon yourself not to worship avodah zarah, lo tiyu b'tochim al ratzonechem. Don't just rely on your own internal powers. Ela gam tasiru et eleh anecha asher b'kirbechem. Don't have anything to remind you. For instance, we give ourselves an example. There are many people, when they have a television in their house, it has to be on 24/6. Or smoking. Okay, it's an avodah zarah. It takes your mind off everything. So therefore, what have you got to do? In order to overcome the yetzer hara of smoking, what do? You throw out all your cigarettes. You throw out your pipes. You throw out your cigars. You throw out everything. Okay, you don't want a television. You throw it out. Finished. Okay, why? Because you don't have the ability to, sorry about that, you don't have the ability to stand up against it. So therefore, what do you have to do? Throw it out of your houses. And therefore, va'afilu ma she'umot, line number 71. Afilu ma she'umot ha'kna'anim hanisharim b'kereb b'chem ovdim. Even if your neighbors have got the television, even if your neighbors have got to get hold of the cigarettes, don't look at them. Finished. V'gam atued levavchem el Hashem, turn your hearts to God. Lo stam shelom b'machshava klal. Don't just think about it. Af al gav she'en bo ra be'etzem. אבל אין בו כוח לעמוד נגד יצר של עבודה זרה באים יצרו. So therefore, what do you have to do? You have to change your perspective. Now, the hardest thing to do, Rabbi Sai, is to change your perspective in life. The hardest thing, to change your way of thinking, to get out of your box and to change. And what happens? This is what Yoshua says to them. What does he say? What happens? Says the Netziv. The history of the Jewish people is, they never accepted upon themselves this special being careful. And they were sure they would be able to have the Avodah Zorah in their house, and they wouldn't worship it. You don't have to worry about Avodah Zorah. אפילו לא יהיה נזהרים כל כך. והנה באמת נכשלו בדור הבא אחריהם. Generations after generations, they had their neighbors, had Avodah Zorah. They had Avodah Zorah. They just didn't have this paradigm shift, this change in perspective, the change in the ideology. They did not do it. Ad, line number 81. Ad sheba Shmuel Hanavi. The Chazar latnot, and he revamped and he made a condition. Vayomer Shmuel kol Beit Yisrael im b'chol levavchem et Hashem hasiru et al hanichar ve'echinu levavchem et Hashem ve'ovdeu levado. Uchtiv d'shnei dvarim asu. Vayasiru b'nei Yisrael et ha'ba'alim et ha'ashtarot va'avdu et Hashem levado. Uperush levado lo et atzmo u'beito ki im Hashem. Vaynu azhara shu midah gvo'a lema'ala miteva enoshit. It's a paradigm shift. Umishumachi nitkayem biyadam harbe dorot ad she'agiu lirovam u'malchei Yisrael v'Yehuda chotim u'machti. Shmuel changed the perspective. He created a paradigm shift. He created a new concept in the world, in the Jewish world. And he managed to do it for about 80 years. 80 years approximately from his period, including David HaMelech, including Shlomo, until the division of the kingdom. That was Shmuel. He understood exactly what the people needed. And how did he do it? He didn't stay at home giving droshes on Zoom. He went to every single shul, and he went to every single place, and he spoke to them about this. It doesn't help people, okay, when you hear big things, you have to practice it. And Shmuel actually managed to do it. Introduction number 2, understanding your environment. A rabbi, in inverted commas, has to understand the yetzarim of his generation. He has to understand where all the problems lie. Okay? If a rabbi didn't know that Maccabi Tel Aviv lost this week in the European Cup, and Liverpool lost to Real Madrid in the European Cup, etc., etc., and he doesn't know what for the Australians, I'll say, but I don't know anything about Australian football. The rabbi doesn't, sorry, Joe, a rabbi can't begin. He has to know what the yetzarim are of his generation and to go down to the actual understanding of it, where people fail, what are the causes of it, and how you change them. And it's a long, long process. But that's what Shmuel does. Shmuel realizes exactly what the problems of his generation are. Questions and understanding. That is the greatness of the Netziv. The Netziv understood his generation, just like Rav Kook did. Let's carry on. Are there any problems, questions, please? Okay, any opinions of people? I'll let you speak now. We carry on.
What would you say by way of summary? Are you saying that his going to the people and telling them, cut out the fooling around, and they followed him? Or was there more to it than that?
There's more to it than that, 100%. First of all, you've got to reason, you've got to understand what the causes of them following other ideas are. If you don't know how to battle or deal with the reasons why and what you're going to give instead, there's always got to give, when you want to change something, you always have to give something, some incentive the other side. If you don't give an incentive the other way, you don't stand to change it. You've got to give a different ideology. You've got to different tools, etc., etc.
So what did he give?
Pardon?
What did Shmuel give?
He gave them, we'll see now. We'll see now what he does. Okay? We'll see now exactly what he does, how he builds it up.
Rav
Okay.
Taylor,
Yes.
I think it's also very difficult, if not impossible, to do a comparison to the generation of Shmuel or the generation of the Netziv or Rav Kook and our current generation, which is post-war, and they have we have different challenges, different kinds of society, different economies, and to try and learn from those generations to our generations is nearly impossible.
Listen, I'll tell you something, Paul. Okay, I'm not using their tools. I'm not using their ideas, but the tools. Mm-hmm. The tools which they used, okay, are tools which they will last for generation after generation. Because and that's what I said, I meant, sorry, 1 minute. Okay, my camera's gone for again. Okay, the tools are, first of all, what I said to you, understanding the generation, understanding what they live in. Okay, Rav Kook understood, for instance, his generation, and he had a slight ability to change things or give a different ideology. Okay, I'm not saying their ideology will fit our ideology. I'm not saying that.
Okay.
What I'm saying is the tools which they give, for instance, understanding the nature of the generation you live in. Okay, that is number one, and that's what Shmuel does. He understands the forces of nature. He understands why people go to Avodah Zarah, what goes behind it. In the picture which the Netziv gives, he understands the reasons why people need Avodah Zarah and how we have to change it and move it over. That means, and that's why I'm saying I'm not using the tools, the ideology, I'm using the tools, because every generation is different, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives people, and that's what I said to you a minute ago, okay? If a rabbi doesn't know the sports results, okay, what influence and who in inverted commas are the singers of his generation, okay? If a guy, Paul, didn't know that when we grew up, the heroes of everybody was the Beatles, the Rolling Stones, etc., etc. And in America, there was Elvis Presley, okay, etc., etc. This rabbi doesn't stand a chance educating anybody. You agree with me? You have to know who the Beatles were. If you didn't know who the Beatles were, you're in trouble, etc., etc., etc. That means, what are the forces which impact the generation? And every generation it changes. Every generation the Yetzer Hara changes. Okay? Before the war it was socialism, communism, etc., etc. Now the isms don't worry me. We live in a postmodern system. And therefore you've got to understand what the postmodern system means to everybody and how we use it and what are we going to learn from it. And that's what I mean, understanding. And that's what Shmuel does. That's in the vision of Rav Kook, Shmuel manages to do. He understands exactly where the people are coming from. Therefore, the first thing is, the message which he gives is the word levado. Somehow, I have to create an environment where only God exists. Nothing else, nobody exists. No other forces exist. How are you going to do that? We'll see. Okay, have I made myself clear, Paul?
Yeah, you made it clear. But many of the questions that people asked was asking, what is the message for our generation?
Okay.
And there's no clear-cut answer.
Obviously, there no. It's multiple.
Right.
In every generation, it's multiple. Okay? Every generation, it's multiple. There are thousands of causes why people won't want to do this and why want to do that, etc., etc. There are multiple causes. But the essence is first thing we have to know is the causes. In order to heal somebody, you have to know the causes of the illness. And the people have to look in their generation and see what are the causes of all things. And that's what Shmuel does. In the picture, in the explanations of Rav Kook and the Netziv, Shmuel manages to understand certain causes. He goes down to the core of the problem, and from then onwards, he's going to build up and up. Okay, and without understanding causes, you'll never be able to fix. Okay, I had a very interesting conversation this week. I'll just tell it to you with some people. I don't remember where it was and how it was. We went somewhere. So he said, somebody said to me, why can't anything, why does everything, why do you need a shever and a tikkun? Why do you need something to be broken and then fix it? Okay, so I said, because we don't understand absolute terms. We only know where we failed. But the minute you know where we failed and where the break is, then you can be gilda tikkun. But if you didn't know where the break in the furniture was, you'll never be able to fix it. So therefore, always one has to look at what is the point of the breaking. What is the nekudat shvira? And the minute you know the nekudat shvira, then you can begin to build up in a different way. And Shmuel understands the nekudat shvira, where his generation were failing. Right? And the word levado is the essence. The word levado. Right. Anybody else got something to say before I carry on? Okay, let's just carry on for another few minutes and we're gonna, sorry. Right. Now, Vayome Shmuel. Shmuel says, line number 90. Line number 90. Vayome Shmuel. Kivtsu et kol Yisrael hamitzpata. Gather all of the Jewish people to a place called Mitzpah. Ve'et palel ba'atchem el Hashem. Vayikavtsu hamitzpata. And they all gathered together. Vayishavu mayim. And they drew forward water. Vayishpechu lifnei Hashem. Vayatzumu bayom ahu vayomru sham chatanu l'Hashem. Vayishpot Shmuel et bnei Yisrael b'mitzpah. Right. The first time since the period of Yehoshua, all the Jewish people take note of the word Kivtsu et kol Yisrael. Everybody, from every single tribe, I want people to come. And we will all gather together, unifying the Jewish people. Okay, the period of the Shoftim was approximately 300 years. And what happens in this 300 years? Each tribe settles down in his own area. And there is no unifying force. From the death of Yeshua until this event, okay, we do not have the Jewish people gathering together. And we say it every single slichot. Mi she'ana lishmuel b'mitzpah hu ya'anenu. Something happened in the mitzpah, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu answered the Jewish people. We say that in the whole list of Mi she'ana. Mi she'ana la'Avraham b'Har Moriah hu ya'anenu. Mi she'ana leGilgal, Yoshua b'Gilgal hu ya'anenu. Mi she'ana lishmuel b'mitzpah. Now, what was Shmuel's prayer? What did he pray for? Okay, that's not written. It's not written what he prayed for, but he does some very, very strange things. Vayishavu mayim. He draws water. There's a well there, and he draws water. Now, let's look at the explanation of the Yerushalmi on this. Says the Yerushalmi, Al Araviit Omer, Mishana Lishmuel, line number 100. Mishana et Shmuel b'mitzvah u'yaneh etchem v'yishma b'kol tzatchem Baruch ata Hashem shomea tza'aka. Says the Gemara, Vayikavtzu ha'mitzvah v'yishavu mayim v'yishpechu lifnei Hashem. V'chi mayim shafchu el ha'melamed sheshafchu et libam k'mayim. Vayomer Shmuel chatanu l'Hashem. Tfilah b'tzibur. They all gather together and they daven. Okay, we see a similar thing which takes place in Megillat Esther. What does she say? Knos et kol haYehudim. Gather everybody together. A unifying force, Rabbi said. A unifying, we're a nation. We're not made up of tribes. We have to daven together. Okay, and davening together means all of us. And this davening together creates a new form, a new relationship. Okay, I'll give you an example, something which I said. I was giving a share once. Perhaps I've spoken to you. I don't remember what I say every time. But one of the things which I said was the following. I said, we're all here on Zoom now. Okay, I see Marcel, I see Joe, I see Phil, I see Paul, I see Mitch. I see all these guys, some in black, some in blue. It doesn't make any difference. Okay? I see you, I'm speaking to you, and I'm listening to you, and you're listening to me. We are using three senses. We're using three senses, Rabotai. So why can't we daven together?
Marcel, you need to be on mute. Marcel, mute yourself, please. We can hear you.
Okay, why can't we daven together? Why can't we daven in a minyan on Zoom? The answer is, in order to make a minyan, we need to feel each other. Working on Zoom does not create feeling. It's virtual. So nachon, I'm using my eyes, you're using your ears, I'm speaking to you, great. So we're using three senses: speech, hearing, sight. But the most important thing is we can't smell one another in inverted commas, or we can't feel one another. Shmuel created a feeling. Okay, to give you all an example. Okay, you can't compare watching a football match on television than being in a stadium. Why not? Joe's nodding his head. Why? Because you feel the environment. You feel the excitement. Shmuel creates excitement. He creates something new. We're a nation. And being a nation means we feel each other. Number one. So his first thing was, we all daven together. 300 years, the Jewish people did not meet one another. Okay, we can't imagine such a thing. Okay, let's carry on one more thing. And what does he say there? Say Chazal. And they all say, Vayomer Shmuel chatanu l'Hashem. Amar Rabbi Shmuel, line 103. Amar Rabbi Shmuel bar Yitzchak, lavash Shmuel chalukan shel kol Yisrael. He sort of wore a kittel, which belonged to all Klal Yisrael. He became the leader, he became the shliach tzibur. Amar lefanav ribona olamim, klum ata dan et ha'adam, ela al shu omer lefanecha lo chatati. Hineni nishbat otcha al omrecha lo chatati, ve'elu omrim lefanecha chatanu. That means Am Yisrael, usually people say, no, I didn't do it, I didn't do it. Push aside everything. No, what did the Jewish people say? Look in line number 93. Vayatsumu bayom ha'u vayusham chatanu l'Hashem. We admit we sinned. Your ability to say, I did something wrong. Shmuel manages to create a new environment. It wasn't just one tribe saying it, one area saying it. A unified nation get together and they say, we sinned. Right. That is the paradigm shift number one. Number two, says Rashi, okay, what does the drawing of water mean? Ulefi mashma'o, says Rashi, Eino ela siman achna'ah. The idea of drawing the water is a sign of humility. We are anei anu lefanecha kamayim halalu anishpachim. We like water being poured out. We're worthless. We humiliate ourselves in front of Hashem. But there's something far greater than that, which I want to explain to you now. Okay? What I want to show you is the following. Okay? And here, okay, there's the explanation of the Abrabanel, which he also gives these ideas, but I want to show you another concept. In Yirmiyahu, it's written the following. Vayomer Hashem Elai, line number 126. And God says to Yirmiyahu, Im ya'amod Moshe u'Shmuel lefanai, ein nafshi el ha'am hazeh. Shalach me'al panai v'yetzeu. Shmuel, Yirmiyahu says, Hashem says to Yirmiyahu, even if Moshe and Shmuel would come in front of me, I still would not want to speak to this people. Now, please take note of these two personalities, Moshe and Shmuel. Hashem emphasizes that in the history of the Jewish people, there were two great people. Each one did something for the sake of Klal Yisrael. Moshe and Shmuel. Now, says Rashi there, Moshe u'Shmuel, Shnehem, both of them, Nizkaku levakesh rachamim al Yisrael. Both of them asked Hashem, were needed to ask mercy for Hashem on Klal Yisrael. Umitchilam hechzirum lamutav. At the beginning, he made them do tshuva. V'achar kach hitpalelu aleihem. And afterwards, he davened for them. V'lo ala b'libam lashiv api ad shechzirum lamutav. He only asked for them to daven. They only asked to daven only after they said they're going to do tshuva. Tefillah comes after tshuva. If Am Yisrael wouldn't have thrown out all their idols, Hashem wouldn't have listened to Shmuel. First of all, they have to do an action of chazara b'tshuva, and then I will speak to them. Moshe, simu ish charbo. Moshe Rabbeinu, after the golden calf, says to the tribe of Levi, kill them. The first time, a Jew kills a Jew. Take note, the golden calf, 3,000 people were killed. Okay, simu ish charbo. Vayizer al pnei hamayim, and he gave them special the stone, the thing, the clay from which the gold, which was the egel hazav, was made. Moshe Rabbeinu put it in water and they had to drink it. V'achar kach eleh el Hashem ulai hachapra. Shmuel b'mitzvah v'yasiru b'nei Yisrael el ha'ba'alim. They had to take away the idols. V'achar kach kivtzu et kol Yisrael ha'mitzvata v'etpalel alechem. Ata eincha yachol lashivam elai v'kach al titpalel lehem. In this period, you can't ask Am Yisrael to do tshuva. The period of the destruction of the first temple, the Jews could not do tshuva. Now, let's take note of two things here. Moshe uses water to punish the Jewish people. Rashi says, why does he give them water to drink? Vayashk et b'nei Yisrael, nitkaven lebodkam kesotot. Like a sotah has to drink a water, So Am Yisrael had to do. The water as a sign of punishment. That's one dimension of water. Water has two sources. One, rain. The other one, drawing it out from the earth. A well, a natural well. Let's take a look at the next stage. Every single sukkos. Chasidim v'anshei ma'aseh. Hayu merakdim lifneihem ba'avukot shel or. At the time of Simchat Beit HaShoeva, they used to dance behind the people who drew out water. And they used to say the 15 Shira Ma'alot. והלוויים בכינורות ונבלים ובמצלתיים וחצוצות ובכלי שיר ולא מספר 15 מעלות, etc., etc., etc. And they used to sing songs, etc., like we do Simchat Beit HaShoeva. And what do they say? Line number 159. ותקעו והגיעו למעלה עשירית ותקעו והריעו ותקעו. הגיעו לעזרה, תקעו והריעו ותקעו. היו תוקעים והולכים עד שמגיעים לשער היוצא מזרח. הגיעו, they got to the eastern gate. הפכו פניהם למערב. They used to turn westwards, from the west towards the east. Just imagine to yourself, the Beis HaMikdash is on the western side. They are facing the east. And they say, Avotenu shayu b'makom hazeh, achroihem el eichal Hashem, upneihem kedma. Our fathers used to always face eastwards, towards the sun. The sun was the source of Avodah Zarah. Every morning, we used to get up and we used to daven towards the east. Why? Because they believed God, the sun was God. Okay? That's why it's called Sunday. The first day of the week is sun, etc., etc. That is the essence. והם המשתחווים קדמה לשמש, ואנו ליה ואיננו ליה. Water and Avodah Zarah. Every time they used to do the Simchat Beit HaShoeva, they used to mention Avodah Zarah. And now, when do we do Simchat Beit HaShoeva? Sukkos. On Sukkos, for some reason, we mention about Avodah Zarah. Says Rav Hutzner, Yista'er lev ha'adam hamidbonen al inyan hazeh shel azkarat avodah zara shel adorot hakodmim shaya bebait rishon dafka b'simchat Beit HaShoeva. Why do they mention on Sukkos at the time of Simchat Beit HaShoeva avodah zara? There is something in water which has a duality. Water comes from heaven, water comes from the ground. The water which comes down from heaven is like an avodah zarah. The water which comes from the ground, man has to deal with it. Shmuel now asks the people, we are now going to change our perspective. We're going to draw the water. We're not going to rely in inverted commas on the God of rain. We are going to change. We're going to daven and we are going to change. And the idea of drawing water is the perspective of the change where we change. We're going to change. We're going to become a people whereby our worship to God, it's not something only from other dependence on other gods. We're going to deal with it. Emet Hashem, the next shiur will go into this in greater detail. The idea of Shmuel, the idea of the drawing of the water, how water, we give the form to water. Remember, water is something which has no form. When you put water in a bottle, you give the water its form. When you put water in a cup, you create the format. Water is the sign of hefkerut, but we are the ones who give it its unique form. And therefore, water has a special message in the world of Shmuel. Beit Hashem, the next shiur will speak about this in greater detail.